صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله. يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة، يا ليتنا إن كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن الكريم: وقوله الحق وهو أصدق الصادقين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واذكر في الكتاب مريم إذ انتبذت من أهلها مكانا شرقيا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. My respected brothers and sisters in Islam, I bid you all Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. After the physical existence of the human being, there are two lives that the human has. The first life is no doubt the life that is ultimately in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being the akhirah. The life which is decided by the actions of insan, yet ultimately by Allah Azza wa Jal, and Allah Azza wa Jal decides the verdict of where insan would end up after this physical existence based on insan's actions. In other words, Allah Azza wa Jal does not oppress you and I. He does not oppress His servants, the Lord of Rahmah and the Lord of Adl, the Lord of Justice. He gives you what you deserve. That's why one hadith that I remember says, "Ad-dunya mazra'atul akhirah." This world is the mazra'ah of the akhirah, the garden of the next world. What is planted in this world grows in the next. Mazra'ah, garden. That's the first life. Yet the second life that we want to speak about tonight is the life which is in your hand and my hand, in our hands, which is the life of legacy. How we decide to honor a human being is in our hands. The spiritual life is one life, the life of akhirah. But that's not something we can affect. That's in the hand of the individual and ultimately in the hands of Allah Azza wa Jal. Yet this life of legacy is in our hands. How we decide to honor a human being, how we decide to venerate the dead, how we decide to give leverage to the status of a human being after he dies is in our hands. not in the human being's hands, nor is it in the hands of Allah Azza wa Jal. It's in our hands. It's for this reason that if you were to look at the different kinds of lives that exist after people have died, you would be able to boil it down to 3 different kinds of lives. The first life is the human being who was honored during his life, honored after his life, but he's a nobody in the next world, in the akhirah. He's unknown. You look at, for example, a number of celebrities, very famous in this world, honored, they hold 4, 5, 6, 7 days of remembrance in media once they die, speaking about their legacy, speaking about the films that they left behind. Robin Williams being one of the most recent examples. Despite how he died, he's honored during his life, after his life. He's honored. In Akhirah, how is he going to be honored? We don't think it's going to be in the best of ways. A man who takes his own life, Allah's rahmah is never to be questioned, but a man who takes his own life, you don't expect him to have the best of verdicts. That's the first type. He's honored during his life. After his life, he's also honored. But in Akhirah, he may be unknown. The second type of human being, during his life, he's not honored. We don't give him much importance. Yet after he dies, we begin to learn more about him. We begin to say, wow, who was that human being? Unfortunately, there's a lot of people, only after he dies do we get to know him. He's gone, yet only then do we say, wow, this alim had unbelievable books, or this philosopher had unbelievable theories, this thinker had great theories which he brought forward. Only after he dies do we get to know him. That's the second type of the human being. The third type, neither in this world is he honored, nor in the next world, nor in the next life of his, meaning the life of legacy, is he honored. Yet in Akhirah, he's a superstar. I'll give you the example of the man who one day Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, he would be describing the asfiya, the pure, and the abrar, the good. He would be speaking about them. To when the people would come to him, they would tell him, Ya Rasulullah, could you give us an example? Because us as human beings, we need something tangible we can look at to get a better understanding. They would tell him, give us an example. To where Rasulullah would say, ذَلِكَ أُوَيْسُ الْقَرَانِي. He would say, that is Uwaisul Qarani, one of the revered companions of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Instantly they would reply. They would say, وَمَا Uwaisul Qarani. And what is Uwaisul Qarani? Over here there's a point to be made. They wouldn't say, وَمَنْ Uwaisul Qarani. Who is Uwaisul Qarani? They would say, وَمَا Uwaisul Qarani. What is Uwaisul Qarani? It's almost as if Uwais was a concept to be analyzed. He was an ideology to be studied. He was a philosophy to be taken. Because there are some people who they have qualities, they have attributes. There are others, no. They have merged so closely with the principle, with the ideology, with the understanding that they became manifestations of the principle itself. That today, we don't simply say Rasulullah was a man who had mercy. We say Rasulullah was the definition of mercy. There's a difference. We don't say Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam was a man who had generosity. No, generosity, were it to be a human being, it would no doubt manifest the character of Imam al-Hasan ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. That when you see Ali ibn Abi Talib, you see, yes, the man by the name of Ali, but that Ali was the manifestation of haqq. That haqq is with Ali and Ali is with haqq. Yes? He became haqq in its entirety. He became manifestation of haqq. You look at Imam al-Hasan, you see generosity. You see Imam al-Hussein, you see bravery. You look at Imam al-Sajjad, you see obedience. You look at Imam al-Baqir, you see knowledge. You look at Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, you see science. There it is, the manifestation of science. You look at Imam al-Kadhim, you see patience. You look at Imam al-Ridha, you see satisfaction. You look at Imam al-Jawad, for example, you see generosity. You look at Imam al-Hadi, guidance. Yes? You look at Imam al-Askari, you see hope. Yet when you look at Sahib al-Zaman, you see the manifestation of the justice on the earth of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That these individuals, in other words, they merged with it. What would they say? They would say, وَمَا Uwaisul Qarani. What is Uwaisul Qarani? There and then Rasulullah, he would give a number of qualities and a number of descriptions of Uwaisul Qarani. Yet then he would come to a line which correlates with the topic being discussed. He would say, مجهول في الأرض معروف في السماء. Unknown in the earth, known in the skies. مجهول في الأرض. He wasn't known. How many great human beings do we have living on this earth who aren't under the spotlight? Who isn't always on the stage leading? Who isn't always representing Islam in the media? Yet he's great. He's unknown in this world. مجهول في الأرض معروف في السماء. What's the difference between a celebrity and between a mu'min? A celebrity strives to be famous in this world. The mu'min strives to be famous in the next world. That's where he wants his name to be written. Not on the Hollywood Kodak next to the Kodak Theater. That's not where he wants his name to be written. He wants his name to be written next to Al-Muhammad, next to Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. He strives to be famous in the next world. These are different kinds of people and the legacies which we can look at. Yet how are we honoring the dead in our communities? Is the system of the funeral that we have in our communities the best of systems? Because when you come to a funeral, you sit down and you remember a human being who has died. Yet in remembering somebody, you can do justice to him, yet at the same time you can do injustice to him. I remember it being said that Shaheed Mutahhari once said Imam Hussein alayhi salam was killed twice, once in Karbala and once on the pulpits. And the idea that sometimes in honoring somebody without knowing it, you're really killing him. How are we honoring the dead? Putting Imam Hussein alayhi salam on the side, just looking at the system of the funeral in our communities. Because if you were to look at different cultures, you'll notice that there are many different ways in which they would react to a dead human being. You, for example, look at endo-cannibalism. They saw the best way to honor somebody is by eating him. Somebody would die, and they would eventually end up eating him. Or you look at those who would practice sky burials. They would give the human being to animals, to, for example, wild birds who would have a nice time with the body. They would indulge in eating it. These people saw how should we deal with a human being after he dies is by doing such rituals, doing such practices to that body. That's on a physical level. Yeah, we are speaking now on a philosophical, on a theoretical, on a community level. How are we honoring the dead in our communities? When we come to a human being's life, you have the life and you have the death. Existence is what? It's life and then death, and then the next phase begins. Today, in death, we mourn. Come and ask anybody, what do you correlate death with? It's typically not correlated with laughs and with celebration. It's correlated with tears, not tears of joy, but tears of sadness. You mourn. You tell somebody, what is death? Death is mourning. It's a time to cry. It's a time to wear black. You see many people right now, black. Why? Because Hussein, black, crying, sadness. Funeral, mourn. You don't correlate smiles with funerals. Yet when you delve deeper into it, you'll see that every funeral is meant to be celebrated and meant to be mourned. Yet the question is, what do we mourn and what do we celebrate? Death comes, we'll mourn the death. Yet is every death meant to be mourned? That's one question I'd like to pose. Is every death meant to be mourned? There's some deaths which the greatest blessing is the death of that human being. When somebody like Saddam dies, you don't feel sadness. Somebody like enemies of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam die, dictators in this world, when they die, you're not sad, you're happy. And it's not happy because he has died and we're happy to see somebody die. It's because of the principles that he held we disagree with. It's not a personal attack towards that human being. Us as followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, we don't hold, or at least we shouldn't hold, personal grudges towards other human beings. Shimr killed Sayyid al-Shuhada salamullahi alayhi because he had a problem with his father, Ali ibn Abi Talib. He would tell him, why do you kill me? He would allude to the point that this had a lot to do with your father, Ali ibn Abi Talib. You know, he did what he did to us in the battles. We have to, it's a sense of retaliation. Yet Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, as some have mentioned, he would kill not the enemy, he would try to kill the enmity. It's not because he hated Shimr, it's because he hated the principles that Shimr held. So sometimes we need to really begin to differentiate between the hate we have for the person and between the hate we have towards the principles that this person held. That's why the irony is where when you begin to see somebody, he says, may Allah curse Yazid. He hates the person. Yeah, then you go into his life and you may see certain things which are not Husseini. What's the problem? There's a contradiction, there's a fuse taken, there's a gap, right? What is the gap? It's the gap between hating Yazid but not hating the Yazidi principles that Yazid held. In other words, when you hate Yazid, you hate the principles he held. And when you love Hussein, it's not just I have an infatuation with the name Hussein. Do you know what we have done? We've kept the shell, and sometimes, and inshallah we don't, we kept the shell of the name Hussein. What's inside of the shell, inshallah, will come another time. For now, we're infatuated with the name Hussein. Labbayka ya Hussein. And that's excellent. Yet when you're saying Labbayka ya Hussein, you're saying may Allah curse music. That's what you're saying as well. You with me? When you say Labbayka ya Hussein, you're saying may Allah curse arrogance, may Allah curse greed, may Allah curse hypocrisy. Because you're saying Labbayka ya Hussein, right? You're honoring Hussein. I respond to your call, O Hussein. Labbayka ya Hussein. Yeah, when you're saying Labbayka ya, you're saying Labbayka ya Haq, Labbayka ya Adl, Labbayka ya justice. You're responding to everything that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam held, lived, and died for. Therefore, there are certain deaths that aren't mourned. And here's the point to be made. A mu'min's death, you mourn the death, but you celebrate the life. A kafir's death, you celebrate the death, yet you mourn, or in other words, you mourn the life and you celebrate the death. Do you know what we have? Unfortunately, sometimes what we do, we mourn the death, but we don't go deeper into looking at celebrating the life. The true way of honoring a human being isn't only in mourning his death, it's in celebrating the life of that human being. And the reason why you're mourning that death, because we said not all deaths are worthy of being mourned. Only a life which was worthy of being celebrated presents a death worthy of being mourned. Not all deaths are worthy of being mourned. Only the life which was worthy of celebration, worthy of being honored, worthy of being venerated, worthy of referring back to, presents a death worthy of being mourned. In other words, the root of the tears for the death of a mu'min are happiness. The root of a funeral for a mu'min is jubilation. It's happiness. Yet the root for the tears of a kafir are sadness. Why? Because you're crying because this human being lived a life which we know wasn't the best. So it's filled with doubt. It's filled with, he died. It wasn't the best life. That's why you're crying. And if that's not why you're crying, then those tears are false tears. They're pseudo tears. They're not tears of quality. They're fake, and they must be fake. Otherwise, or you had a personal attachment to that human being, or for whatever the reason could have been. They're not tears which are worthy of being given to that human being. And if they are being dropped, it cannot be for good reasons, and they shouldn't be for good reasons. In other words, mourning a mu'min is, the root of it is happiness. The root of Muharram is celebration. Muharram is sad. Yet go to its core. When you cry, do you feel bad? Ask anybody. When you cry for Sayyid al-Shuhada, salamullahi alayh, it gives you good feelings. I've always said, or I've said before, that you don't need psychologists, because Hussein is the best of psychologies. Hussein is the best of therapists. That's why the poetry says along the lines of, all problems are made easy with remembering the musibah of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. The root of tears for Karbala, the root of tears for the mu'min is happiness. And that death holds value because the life before it was valuable as well. So you mourn the death because the life was valuable, right? And at the same time, for example, when you look at Karbala specifically, the death showed us how great the life was, because he went through those tortures, he went through those calamities, he went through the pain, which showed us how valuable the life must have been. The fact that he went to the extent of putting up so much with the enemies shows us how valuable the life must have been. Only a valuable life deserves a death and justifies a death like the death of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Are you with me? Otherwise, if anybody was to die like Imam Hussein alayhi salam, would we remember him? What does this say? You're telling me there aren't people who have been beheaded in history? We have beheadings nearly every day. Just open up the news. What is it that made it so powerful the death of Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam. It must have been the life which he lived. So when I say, look at how he was killed, look at what happened to the ladies, look at the tents being burnt. Yes. But then the human being goes and asks, he rewinds a little bit. He asks the question, how great must the life have been for him to put up with so much to preserve the principles and teachings that were brought forward in that life? So here, specifically in the status, in the case of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the death is what shows us how great the life must have been, and the life also comes and justifies why this death is something to be remembered. What have we done? The death. Remember the death, and it's something that it's not bad. Nobody's saying it's bad. No. But how much of the emphasis is being placed on the life of the individual rather than his death? Because the death was the end. It was the end of the film. The movie has finished. So does it not make more sense to watch the whole film or to just cry about the ending? At least I would argue nobody comes and rewinds or forwards a movie to go and just watch the ending. It won't make much sense. As a powerful of the conclusion may have been, or how powerful the ending of the movie may have been, having a closer understanding and indeed having a better understanding of the entire film is by watching all of it. So when the human being dies, that's when what happens? The film is complete. Now we go back, we rewind. That's why we go to the incident of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and you'll ask the same question. How much emphasis have we placed on the life of Hussein? Not the death. Come and ask somebody, what do you know about Karbala or about Imam Hussein alayhi salam? He'll tell you Karbala. Karbala was one day out of the 58 years of Imam Hussein alayhi salam's life. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, he refers to the age of Imam Hussein alayhi salam as 58. 58 years. Karbala was the icing on the cake. Karbala was the cherry on the sundae. You can keep on going with the analogies. Karbala was the peak. Now what's under the peak? Tell him something other than Muharram, something other than Karbala. Hussein, the scholar. Hussein, the man of mercy. Hussein, and the list goes on and on. Karbala was one day. I don't know if there's any injustice that could be done to Imam Hussein alayhi salam than just remembering the death of Sayyid al-Shuhada. And the death was given importance because of the life. Meaning the life is what gave value to that death. And the death showed us how important that life was. It's an interdependent relationship. Saying, I'm going to remember the death of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, yet not rewinding to ask the question, what happened throughout the life of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, is a great injustice towards the Imam salamullahi alayhi. Likewise towards any good human being that died. To just remember his death is an injustice to the multiple years that he left. In other words, before his death. Prior to his death. Within Karbala, you'll notice the same injustice. How much of the life of the Imam have I connected with? Because when we disconnect between the two, this is when you begin to notice the gaps that begin to take place. You'll notice the gap between rituals and practice. You'll notice there's a gap. Merging needs to be taken place. You'll notice the gap between what else? Gap between theory and practice. You'll notice there's a gap taking place between the two. You'll notice there's a gap between how the heart feels, yet how everything else acts. Gap. Why do these gaps exist? Because the ending, much emphasis is being placed on. what happened throughout the whole life of the Imam alayhi salam is up to us to delve into. And if we do not delve into the life aspect, brothers and sisters, of the Imam alayhi salam, then without us even realizing it, we're beginning to do injustice towards the Imam alayhi salam. Who today has the banner of Islam other than us, you and I? Who? If we are not if we don't understand the Imam alayhi salam in the proper way, then therefore we cannot project the Imam in the proper way. And in other words, in result, the world would therefore not know who the Imam alayhi salam truly was either. The Christian isn't going to go into Bihar al-Anwar and read about Imam al-Hussein, or into Usul al-Kafir, or into Shaykh al-Mufid's mentioning of the lives of Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam. He's going to see what the Muslims are going to say, right? The gap begins to exist between the ritual and between the practice. Look at the example of Malik al-Ashtar. Malik al-Ashtar, he shows us that there cannot be a gap between practice and ritual. And we're mentioning that these gaps exist when there's a lack of understanding in connecting the dots. We know the dots, yet the dots just need to be connected. As some may have said, look at the story of Malik al-Ashtar, for example. Malik al-Ashtar, it's said that commander of army of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, sallu ala Muhammad wa alihi. Malik al-Ashtar, commander of army of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, the one who the Imam alayhi salam himself, he says Malik, wa ma Malik, Malik, and who is Malik? He says, to the extent of saying, I am to Malik as Malik, or Malik is to me as I was to Rasulullah. The level and the status of Malik al-Ashtar radiyallahu anh, Malik al-Ashtar would one day be walking. It said that Malik would wear a hoodie on his head, no doubt possibly referring to the humility of Malik al-Ashtar. Some may have misunderstood the humility of Malik for weakness. So what did they do? They would finish the date, they would take, the famous story says, the seed of the date, and they would pelt it at Malik al-Ashtar. Malik, what does he do? Keeps on walking. The man is standing, the story says the man was there. A man comes to him. He tells him, do you know who you just threw this seed at? He would tell him, who? He would tell him, Malik al-Ashtar, commander of army of Ali ibn Abi Talib. The man would be shocked. He would say, wow, Ali ibn Abi Talib is commander. I just threw a seed at him. This can't be good. What does he do? He follows to see where Malik al-Ashtar was. He sees him in the mosque. He sees Malik praying. He finishes for him to finish. He waits for him to finish the salah. He comes to him. He tells him, Malik, forgive me. I didn't know who you were. He would tell him, don't worry. He would tell him, what do you mean, don't worry? He would say, do you see those 2 rak'at I just prayed? He would say, yes. He would say, I just prayed them asking Allah Azza wa Jal to forgive you and to forgive what you have done. Malik al-Ashtar, what is he showing? He's showing that this salah that I just prayed, I didn't allow it to disconnect with my life. What does this notion tell us? The merging, if it doesn't take place, then injustices begin to take place. If the life is not connected with the death of the Imam alayhi salam, this is where injustice takes place toward the life of the Imam. Therefore, honoring the death of a human being lies in remembering the death, in honoring the life, in other words, remembering truly honoring the death, venerating the death of insan, is by going back and looking at the life of that human being. What happened throughout that life? What did the Imam alayhi salam do? How did he act? 58 years, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam mentions. One day is going to be remembered of the life of the Imam. If that's not injustice, I don't know what injustice is. We are the vanguards of the message of the Imam alayhi salam. We have the flag in our hand. And if we don't honor the Imam alayhi salam in the way which needs to be honored, then we're killing the Imam. Do you know how many people how many people may have died throughout history because I'm telling you that this life of legacy is in our hands, in other words. Us, the Muslims, the Shia of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. That second life of legacy is in Allah's hands. We said that the life of akhirah, two factors, the actions of insan and ultimately decision of Allah Azza wa Jal, which no doubt is built upon the actions of insan and his life and all details related to his life, how he lived, and Allah Azza wa Jal deals with that in his existence in this world. Yet the second life, the life of legacy, that's when you and I come into the picture. The legacy of Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam today, at least we know, in this time is in our hands. It's in the hands of the people. How many companions, you'll notice, aren't mentioned in communities? And they won't be mentioned. And some people may die not knowing who these companions were. We know that Imam came with 72, and no doubt some have mentioned that there are more than 72 companions with the Imam alayhi salam. You go and you'll see a list of the companions. Do you know how many of these companions possibly aren't even mentioned in Muharram time? You'll hear very much emphasis on Muslim ibn Awsaja, for example, Habib ibn Mudahar, and rightfully so, great companions of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Yet how many other companions aren't even mentioned? I believe that Abis needs about 5 days, just for Abis ibn Abi Shabib al-Shakiri. Abis, who would take off his armor before he goes onto the battlefield. They would tell him, Abis, you think about it, typically a warrior when he goes onto the battlefield, one of the things that you do, it's a prerequisite to protecting yourself, you put on the armor. Abis takes off his armor. They tell him, Ajuninta ya Abis, have you gone mad, O Abis? He would reply with the famous reply saying, Hubbal Hussein ajannani. He would say, the love of Hussein has made me go mad, has made me go insane. This kind of a stance, what does it call for? It calls for the entire life of Abis ibn Abi Shabib al-Shakiri, who 12th Imam Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajul Sharif, he sends salams to Abis. He says, Assalamu alayka ya Abis ibn Abi Shabib al-Shakiri. 12th Imam sends salams to Abis. Question here arises, who is Abis? Not only one day in the life of Abis. Abis in his entirety, what did he do? We'll remember the death of Abis. Possibly you'll see people. Or that one stance of Abis ibn Abi Shabib al-Shakiri. Or the Ghafariyan brothers, who some have mentioned, they would see them laughing on the 10th of Muharram. Happy. They would say, excuse me, two brothers, Ghafariyan brothers, you're not, typically, what are you laughing about? They would say, how could we not laugh when in a few moments we would be with Rasulullah, he would be quenching our thirst. Some have mentioned along these lines. Ghafariyan brothers, how could we not be happy when it's going to be the Prophet of Islam who's going to be waiting to welcome us? These are stances. How much emphasis is placed on these people? They'll die out if the mu'min and the follower and the mu'ali of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam don't strive to carry the legacy of these individuals. That's why on nights like these, when the musibah of the Imam alayhi salam is remembered, this encourages us to ask the question, they went through so much pain, They went through so much difficulties. Why? What was the principles they held prior to that death? Questions should arise in the mind of insan, should they not? You remember Zainab alayhi salam, as we mentioned yesterday, and the trials she had to go through, to the extent that today you go to Tell al-Zainabiyya in Karbala, which now is being flocked by lovers and devotees to the message of Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam, and you'll read on top of that tellah, it says, As-salamu alayki ya jabal al-sabr. Peace be upon you, O the mountain of patience. What was she patient? You know what they call her? al-Musa'ib, the mother of sorrows, the mother of calamities. Yet at the same time, you'll notice what Zainab alayhi salam had to go through. You'll go and you'll hear the hadith that says, referring to Zainab alayhi salam, عالمة غير معلمة. She teaches, yet she was never taught. Allah Azza wa Jal injected the knowledge into Zainab alayhi salam. Alima, she knows, but she was never taught. That Zainab of pain, Zainab of sorrows, some have mentioned today, you think about Zainab alayhi salam, you'll think of an old lady bent back crying. Yeah, how about Zainab the scholar, right? Yeah, those events that took place in Karbala goes and leads for the human being to ask himself what happened in the life of Zainab alayhi salam. Or you look at Abu Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam, and he would go to the extent of having 2 of his arms chopped off, salamullahi alayhi. Insan goes and asks himself, what did he do in his life? And what were the principles he held that he went to the extent of giving 2 of his arms for this message? What was that message? That is Karbala. I see the head being cut. I say, this is what the human being is led to ask. What was the message that allowed this human being to go to the extent of having his head decapitated? What were those principles? What was that message that allowed one man to give his 6-month-old baby for the sake of this message and for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal ultimately? To where the Imam would say in Karbala, he would say, Allahumma khudh minni hatta tarda. Oh Allah, take from me until you're satisfied. Ridan biqada'ihi wa tasliman li amrih. Satisfied with his decree, submitted to his command. What was that message where he would go to the extent of doing that? That what happened in Karbala should lead the human being to ask, why did those things happen in Karbala? That the Imam did not die on the 10th of Muharram simply so we can remember how he died. No, the Imam wanted us to think about why did he die. How is that done? By not simply focusing on the death, but on remembering the life. On not simply mourning the death, but on celebrating the life. And not simply focusing on the end, but remembering the beginning and the middle. That the end shows us how important those 2 were. That is where it lies. Karbala is the icing. Muharram is the peak. What is under that peak, what is under that icing, is what comes in when you look in not only to the death, but to the life of the Imam alayhi salam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Yet there are certain people who you can't drift away from going and remembering how they died, because it's too painful. Let me mention to you this last point before we go on to the musibah. Some may say, should we not mourn Karbala? Should we just celebrate it? No. We mourn the physical, but we celebrate the spiritual. Give me your attention on this one. We mourn the physical, but we celebrate the spiritual. I mourn that chest that was trampled, yet I celebrate the knowledge and the principles that were given to me and emanated from that chest and the heart and the soul and existence of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salam. I mourn the eye that was pierced, Abu Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam, that blessed eye of his that was pierced with that arrow. Yet what do I celebrate? I celebrate the fearlessness and the insight that that eye held, that Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam refers to, says, نافذ البصيرة. كان عمنا العباس بن علي سلام الله عليه, Imam al-Sadiq mentions to us along these lines, نافذ البصيرة, insightful and penetrating with the insight of his eye. I celebrate that insight of Abu Fadl. I celebrate that eye, that it is said that one of the Imams alayhim salam would be approached and he would be asked, who is greater, Kumail ibn Ziyad al-Nakha'i, Kumail, or Abbas? What would the Imam reply? He would say, Abbas is such that he looks towards someone and he turns him into a Kumail. Look at the hadith. Who's greater, O Imam? Abbas or Kumail? He says Abbas. We says, what are you talking about? What kind of, you're comparing two completely different things. Abbas, he looks. What is the eye of Abu Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam? An entire analysis is required to be given simply to the eye of Abu Fadl alayhi salam. What is that eye? What kind of insight? Nafidul basira, 6th Imam alayhi salam says, penetrating in his insight. What is that eye that Abbas alayhi salam had? He would look at a human being and he would turn him into a kumail. I celebrate that insight. I celebrate that penetrating insight of Abu Fadl salamullahi alayhi. I mourn the dress that was burnt in Karbala and the clothing that were burnt. I mourn it, and I ever so mourn it, because it's tragic that never before Karbala would you see the ladies of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam running in the way that they did and oppressed in the way that they were that they were oppressed. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he would mention, I mentioned to you yesterday, he would say, did you ever see ladies? He says, when I saw the ladies going from room to room, when they would burn the house of 6th Imam alayhi salam, he would say, I remembered the ladies who went from tent to tent. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he would, in other words, allude to Karbala. I celebrate the modesty that was kept by Zainab alayhi salam, despite the clothings or the tents, whatever you want to say, was burnt in Karbala. That I mourn the physical, yet I celebrate with jubilation and happiness the spiritual. Leaving one without the other, injustices take place. Tears keep the principle alive. When Rasulullah says in the heart of the mu'min, he refers to this, when he says in the heart of the mu'min for Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam is a fire that will never cool. That fire is kept alive by emotion. That fire is kept alive by tears. That fire is kept alive by beating the chest. That fire is kept alive by screaming out of love and passion for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. That fire should, and we can say, is kept alive by coming and wearing black and expressing sadness towards the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam through emotion or through whatever means it is. Many of the methods in remembering Imam Hussein alayhi salam are legit methods, and they keep the principle alive. They keep the teachings alive. One without the other is where injustices take place. Nobody is coming and saying approach Karbala like a logical rationalist and materialist and kill all senses of emotion, and neither is anybody saying come and approach it in a way where all it is is an emotional event. No. Merging the two is what brings light to the true message of the Imam alayhi salam. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, what are different ways of remembering the Imam alayhi salam? Is this sha'ira acceptable? Is this not? That's not the discussion. You come and you look at somebody on a night like this, young daughter of Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam, who had such a close relationship with the Imam. And you can't stop except to remember her death and the way she died. Because that death is what springs life into the heart. And it's what springs love towards the message in the heart. This young little girl who would be sitting in the bazaar of Sham, and she would say, "Where is my father Hussein? I need to see my father Hussein." Zainab alayha salam, she would come to her, she would tell her, "Your father is on a trip," referring to the trip of Akhirah, of course. She would say, "I want to see my father. I have to see my father Hussein." At this time, she would cry and the ladies would cry with her. The cries reach Yazid. Yazid says, "Who is this little girl crying? What are these noises, in other words, I hear? Why do I hear cries?" They would tell him, "Oh Yazid, this is the little daughter of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein by the name of Ruqayyah. Ruqayyah, little daughter of Sayyid al-Shuhada." He says, "Really? What does she want?" They would tell him, "She wants to see her father Hussein. She loves her father. She wants to see him." He would say, "Take this to her." A number of men begin to walk towards Ruqayyah alayha salam with a tray in their hands. Do you know what really hurts the heart? When Ruqayyah turns to Zainab and she tells her, "Amma Zainab, I didn't request food. I don't understand why they're bringing food to me." Zainab knows this isn't food. They come, Zainab alayha salam would mourn what she begins to see approaching Ruqayyah alayha salam. They place the tray in front of Ruqayyah alayha salam. Ruqayyah says, "Maybe this is a letter from my father Hussein. Maybe this is a message from my father Hussein. Maybe this is something from my father Hussein, a clothing I can smell and remember, something that can lead me to remember where my father is and who my father was." Zainab alayhi salam is standing and looking at this incident and this scenario. Ruqayyah alayhi salam removes the tray, the cover from the tray. Does she see a letter from her father Hussein? No, Allah. Does she see a message from her father Hussein? La wallah. She sees the bloody beheaded head of her father Hussein. سلام الله عليك سيدتي رقية. Ruqayyah goes down to the tray. She sees the head, she hugs the head. Imagine this. She speaks to the head. It's almost like Ruqayyah began to reproach the head, saying, "Father, Father, who will take care of us after? Father, Father, who is there for the ladies? Oh, Father Hussein. Father, you have orphaned me. Father, who's going to take care of me when I get older?" One of the joys in the hearts of a daughter is for her to become successful and go and show her success to her father. "Father, look at what I have become. Father, through your teachings and through your upbringing, look at where I have gotten." Ruqayyah at a young age has nothing but complaints, not even to her father, to the head of her father, أبا عبد الله. At this time the voice of Ruqayya alayha salam goes quiet. Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, he turns to his aunt Zainab. He says, Amma Zainab, irfa'i at-tifla an ra's walidi. Aunt Zainab, remove the child from the head of my father. Zainab tells him, Zayn al-Abidin, why? It's been a while. Let her mourn, let her see it, let her have enough, let her get satisfied with the head of her father Hussein. He would say, Amma Zainab, the child has died. Ruqayya becomes a shaheeda. Ruqayya leaves this world on the head of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. They take the body of Ruqayya to a lady who is known to wash the bodies of the dead. She begins to wash the body of Ruqayya alayha salam to where she stops. Zainab asks her, why did you stop? She would say, this little girl is sick. I see marks on her body. I can't wash the body. It's a sick body. Zainab begins to cry. She tells my master, I must have said something that bothered you. Why do you cry? She says, this isn't a sickness on Ruqayya. What is it, O Zainab? These are from the lips of the people of Kufa. These are from the lips of those who doubt Ruqayya alayha salam in the way that they did. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi راجعون. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. And may you G, brothers and sisters, 3 times with the loudest of our voices, asking Allah Azza wa Jal to accept these tears that have fallen from the eyes, and to ask Him to allow us to be ones who celebrate the life of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein just as we mourn his death. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibu al-mudtarra idha da'ah wa yakshifu as-su'. Amma yujibu al-mudtarra idha da'ah wa yakshifu as-su'. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. اللهم شافي كل مريض بحق مريض كربلاء زين العابدين. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين واخذل الكفر والمنافقين. اللهم احفظ زوار الحسين. Oh Allah, protect the visitors of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and grant us with the ziyarah of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein next year, 40. برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. And to answer our prayers and to hasten our 12th Imam's reappearance, we end the majlis with a Fatiha before salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.